here. You are with Best Press Media. I'm Emily Best, and we are here on unceded traditional stolen land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We are here on the kind of precipice of a by-election in the city of so-called Vancouver. I am really honored to be here today with two of my favorite people in the city. Um, I've got Jean Swanson here, and Jean Swanson, your bio is really hard to sum up in just a few words. You have a 40 plus year long, I guess, how many years now? Many, many years of anti-poverty activism under your belt. You're a lifelong anti-poverty activist, a writer here in so-called Vancouver. You served as an elected city councillor from 2018 to 2022 with the Coalition of Progressive Electors. Um, you've been a longtime advocate for social housing, harm reduction, and the redistribution of wealth. You wrote and published a book in 2001 called Poor Bashing, The Politics of Exclusion. It's a phenomenal read. And it explores the many ways that the systemic exclusion and discrimination of people experiencing poverty compounds the harm done to these people facing poverty and the greater community at large. And in 1971, with 25 single mothers from the Raymer Place social housing complex in Strathcona, you blocked railroad tracks to protest to get an overpass built.
Actually, I didn't do that. I wasn't at the Raymer
Oh,
protest.
you weren't at the protest. Okay, that's been a long, but you did declare what in 2022, it was May 7th, was the militant mothers of Raymer.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was your involvement with that protest? You were involved in helping get it passed, or
I wasn't involved in the protest at all. I know a couple of the people that were,
oh,
but
okay,
that's
okay,
basically it. Yeah.
okay. Thank you for correcting me. I know that's been a big part of yeah of the history here, and I know people really respect your support of the communities that we're experiencing challenges in that neighborhood. And in 2020, oh, where is it? In the 1970s, you were the editor for a newspaper, and this was the Downtown East Side Residents Association. And what else? There's just so much. You were really pivotal in having the Carnegie Hall. This was the in the 70s, was that organization associated with getting that community center built? That was
Yeah, it was a 7-year battle.
7 year battle. Um, and I mean, I could go on and on. I'm really honored to speak with you because it's very special to speak with somebody who's been in the community for this long. You've seen so much change, you've seen so many things happening, and your message hasn't changed. And that's something that is so rare. People, your bio says you're a politician, and we so often associate politicians with uh, people that aren't that, people that don't have that level of integrity and care. And that leads me to Sean Orr. I know that you are endorsed by Jean. I know that you have Jean's support, and I know that any friend of Jean is a friend of many. And I also know that you have your own legacy here in so-called Vancouver, where you've been living here a long time and you have been speaking up for a long time. And you are one of the few voices that has been writing about what's happening at City Hall from a perspective of knowing and calling out corruption when you see it, and also piecing together like the greater context. And I think that that is so so important because so often we miss that in the media. And I know that uh, that is a really big part. I know, as you mentioned in your book, Jean, that the politics of exclusion, they're not just reserved to personal feelings and personal stigma. that we have and the words that we use when we describe people facing poverty, it is systemic and it is pervasive in our media. And I guess some questions that I have for you both. I'll start with Sean. I know you are, uh, as you've said, and as I said, you are a musician, so you know about the music scene. Your band is called Needs, and you guys have been active
Yeah.
for a long time, right? Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
awesome. And you're the front man.
12 to 15 years, I think, yeah.
Nice. And I'm a musician myself. I know that takes a lot of commitment to be a
Mhm,
musician in the city. A lot of my network and my followers are also musicians, and
mhm,
having people that know about the music scene, I think, is really important because we are, so parallel. We run so parallel to people facing poverty in this community because the reality is we don't make much money very often, and we also rely on public spaces and community spaces, and yeah. So I guess getting started, I had some questions about, I guess, just maybe from Jean, how did you and Sean connect? And what was your impression of Sean? How did this come about? How did you connect with one another?
I first met him when he was running in the last election. We both go to all candidates meetings and stuff, and I basically agreed with everything he said. So um, that's how I first met him. And then I've been reading his Tea and Two Slices and noticed
mhm,
that he's, really sticking up for all the important things. And I also like that he's a working class guy. And yeah, and he's a fighter. And I think he's the one that's going to be able to take Sim and ABC, and not
yeah,
just kind of la-di-da let them do their thing because they have a majority, but really make them wear all the bad things that they're doing, like putting cops all over the downtown east side,
yeah.
pausing supportive housing, stuff like that.
Sean, what about you? How do you know Jean?
Oh, sorry, when did I first meet Gene?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, it would have been before 2022. I can't remember exactly, but it would have been probably at a housing protest or something like that. And then there was a when I first formally met Gene, it was there was a panel on safe supply that CBC did at Woodward's, with Karen Ward was on it and Brandon Grasuti, and I can't remember the other speakers. But yeah, I definitely like that was more of the formal introduction, and then yeah, during the 2022 campaign. But of course, I've been writing about Jean in my column for years. I obviously supported her run in 2017 and 2018, and was writing a lot about it. There was a lot of sort of defending her decisions, her votes at council, because a lot of people kind of misunderstood them. I think because I think she really understands how like the land economics work and the inflationary effect that zoning can have. So it's not just voting no on rental housing; it's voting no to the financialization that surrounds it. And yeah, so I was there's a big kind of like if you're really tuned into the housing debate, there's this really kind of big YIMBY versus NIMBY kind of dichotomy, which I think is a bit of a false dichotomy. Um, that definitely plays out, but I mean, I just think we can have supply, and we can have density, but we can have it without displacement, and we can have it without affecting renters. We can do all that. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a combination of things, and the city has a lot available, a lot of tools in their toolkit that they could be using that they're not because they see it as a revenue generator. They see it as a handout to their friends, kind of thing. So
I'm really glad you brought that up, Sean, because that is, I know that's been a really contentious issue and a very difficult topic to discuss with people, especially,
Mm.
people who consider themselves progressive and really genuinely, I think their heart is in the right place and they want to be supportive of whatever the right thing is. And I think that YIMBY versus NIMBY argument especially for me, I mean, that's a very complex thing to parse through. And I
Mhm.
appreciate that you are able to see the nuance in it, because I also, from witnessing what Jean was up against in council during her time there, not only is it, these motions are they're very opaque, like they're very challenging to parse through as somebody, who, I've been to journalism school, like I read a lot of complex documents and I have a really hard time with city documents. And I know that there's a lot of coded language and there's a lot of ways that these, you might think you're voting for a motion and then it gets passed, but it's been amended so many times in that process that you end up getting something that's, just such a small piece. And then people go, well, that didn't work. But it's because it's kind of been corrupted throughout that process. And I'm wondering if you can speak to, I mean, maybe Jean as well, because I know you were in the office during that time. What was that like? What was that like to put so much work into something and to have it maybe misconstrued or not quite have the full context given in the media landscape, and then also to have, maybe you have a motion passed, but it's kind of a half-hearted celebration because it's like, well, did it really pass or is it a success? And how did you measure those successes when you were in office?
Oh, I don't know. I'm very relieved not to be there anymore, actually, on a personal level, not on a political level. On a political level, I'd rather be there, but um, yeah, I had a lot of motions that were amended to mush so that they were basically useless. But there was a few that weren't, like the one to get SRO vacancy control, which we finally have, which is good. And which we might be able to, if we had the right council, maybe we could expand that to the whole city. That's what I'm hoping Sean can do after he gets elected in 2026, after he's
Yeah,
elected in 2025.
And what
yeah, I think that's definitely part of it is getting our foot in the door, and I think I've got 18 months to kind of learn the system, so it's kind of a good trial run in terms of learning how council works and learning how motions work and things like that. And then in 2026, when we have a progressive council, we can implement many of our goals. Right now, I think there is room. Even if we get two progressives in the by-election, I think there's room to do um, maybe not vacancy control and probably not a mansion tax, but to reverse some of the damage. I think I think there's a possibility to reverse the ban on supportive housing. We have Lisa Delminato, Rebecca Bly, Pete Fry all voted against it. So if you have two more, that's 5 votes. And then it would just take getting through to Peter Meisner or Lenny and just making them see how this is really going to um, make more homeless people and make everything worse. And I think once they see that, and once they see how the by-election goes too, I think it'll give them some sort of incentive to be like, okay, this is happening now. Like this is real. We're not popular, you know. But on the flip side, if they get both of their candidates in, it's like, oh boy, then we're in for a real uphill battle in 2026. So that's why this by-election is so important. That's why doing all this media like you're doing and getting the word out is so important.
Yeah. The media landscape is so pivotal and important, and obviously it has changed in the last several years here, and yeah, I'm hoping to have conversations because I know that that voice is so missing in in these spaces that are more progressive. And I wonder if you can speak to I know there it's a challenging question, but it's also a challenging topic. Just this idea that we are in this very and reading your book, Jean, the I know that these aren't new problems. And if you go through a history book, you know that the history of poverty and of poor bashing, and which is excluding and systemically discriminating against and marginalizing people economically. And I wonder, there are a lot of people who are disenfranchised right now, and they might be. I know in the 2023 election, this came up a lot where people would be turning away from politics. And I think maybe in this moment, they might be turning back and
Mhm.
waking up to how important it is. And I wonder if you can speak to the importance of local government. I know that Kshama Sawant has been a big inspiration for a lot of people just in looking at you know, uh, things that can be done, what's been done in Seattle. Like, how big is this moment, and what would you say to people that are thinking of turning away or feeling, disempowered, disengaged, regardless of their, ideology or their political spectrum? I think we think about things in terms of left and right, but again, harkening back to your work, Jean, and your book and your work, Sean, um, it is an economic disparity that is so profound and has increased so much over, since the statistics that you cited in your book, Jean, which, statistics from 1986 and the wealth divide there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can speak to that, Sean, and how you feel in this upcoming election. And if you have thoughts, Jean, of course, share as well. Um,
You go, Sean.
Oh yeah, no, I think we're really seeing it at the doors. We're seeing it on the streets. I mentioned the supportive housing ban. There was 500 people outside City Hall. There was hundreds of speakers inside. So I think people are really understand the importance of local democracy, and people are starting to connect those dots in terms of um, say what Elon Musk is doing in the United States. They're connecting that to what's going on here with Chip Wilson and his low tide properties, and they're connecting it with Peter Armstrong, who's a big backer of ABC, and there's many more. And I mean, like I keep telling people, we had our own sort of Doge here, when Ken Sim hired a private firm to do a budget uh, review, and they had no idea what they were doing. They were from, I think they were from Alberta, and they suggested all these things, and then you've got the mayor going, "Oh, let's monetize libraries." You've got them raising property taxes 23.68% in 3 years, and he's not dealing with a pandemic. Like, I mean, Kennedy Stewart was criticized for raising property taxes, but he had a global pandemic to deal with. And in this case, Ken Sim is raising property taxes but cutting services, and of course, where's the money going? And we know that it's going to the VPD, $100 million to the VPD. And people don't feel safer. People are starting to connect those dots. I think like they did, or in 2016. Um, people were really radicalized then. Um, people are starting to see that these budget priorities are completely out of whack. They're seeing that uh, sweeping people off the streets violently has consequences, real consequences. They get pushed to their neighborhoods. They see more people in parks. They know that this approach isn't working. Um, and they know that it's because of the disproportionate political power of the super rich. They're buying their ways into city halls and governments across Canada, and we have to stand up and fight against that. And obviously, elections are just one part of that. um, the work that Jean's doing, the work that groups like Dolph and Vandu are doing, any number, you could just list off any number of the groups that are doing incredible work. So it's not just limited to elections. There's mutual aid that needs to be done. There's organizing that needs to be done on all levels, and there's all levels of government as well to because it's going to take all levels to fix a lot of these problems. So it's a long-winded answer, but yeah.
It's good. It was a long-winded question.
Yeah.
That's,
And
Jean,
if one level of government is really outrageous, like in the States, the federal government is like so awful, I can't even comprehend it really.
Mhm,
Then other levels of government can sneak in and try and protect people, like some
mhm,
of the state governments are doing, and city governments can do things too, like FIFA is coming up in 2026. And
mhm.
is that if ABC is in power, will they just send increase their cop barrage to sweep everyone off the streets? And or will we get a better council that puts up some tiny houses or something? I just heard too that this council gave Aboriginal Front Door only 6 months funding till September when they usually give them a year. That's the group that provides all the storage for folks on the street, and it's also a shelter, and they provide food, and they get people on housing lists and help them get home if they want to. And it's just an awesome group. They're only funded for 6 months. So maybe if you get on, you can bump that up.
Yeah, that's outrageous. I didn't actually know that. I met with Chris down there a few months ago, and just seeing the sheer number of storage bins and just
Yeah.
connecting that to like that's a real person's belongings, and the optics of them being in a giant trash can too. It was so illuminating, and then hearing about the struggles too with operating this shelter, because it's a only when it gets down to -2 are they allowed, I think is what it is, or 2 degrees, that there's some threshold, and that they actually can't have people stay there. Like, there's so many there's so many barriers and handcuffs to groups down there. Ken Sims already even muzzled them in how they can speak, essentially tone policing them, with tying them to the city's code of conduct. So if you criticize ABC, if you criticize the government, you're likely to have your funding cut or pause. I'm not sure if that's what happened in terms of Aboriginal Front Door, but they used Yarrow as an example, and Yarrow is a great uh, Chinatown advocacy group working with intergenerational trauma, and connecting seniors with young people, and providing food and support and translations and things like that. And they used Yarrow as an example to muzzle these groups. So yeah, I think he has real contempt for the downtown east side. Like, I think he like in his heart, like, I think he hates it.
yeah,
And like, I really believe that, like some of the motions that we've seen, obviously, the street sweeps and pausing supportive housing, but I mean, even the leaked memos that we've seen, wanting to essentially ethnically cleanse the downtown east side, and carry on this colonial aspect of removing indigenous people from land, as though urban indigenous folks aren't entitled to live in cities and have to go to their home reserves. Obviously, a lot of people don't know where they're from because they were swept up in the 60s scoop. Tanya Webking is a co-chair of COPE, and she luckily does know where she's from, but I mean, a lot of people don't, and they're entitled to live on this land. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, what we're seeing is I think just like a lot of contempt, and it's pretty scary. So I think getting in there and being and being a voice not only for the downtown east side but for every marginalized person in Vancouver would be good.
That leads me to the just one more question for you, Sean. The What would you say to people who are, maybe less informed about the downtown east side? I think a lot of people I know on an international level, a lot of the news that gets out about Vancouver, I think it was picked up by like a maybe even Fox News at one point. There was a lot of
Mhm.
stigma around the downtown east side. I think it was to do with some of our harm reduction
Yeah.
measures and the activism that has been happening and has been a huge part of, was pivotal during the HIV epidemic and is has saved so many lives. What would you say to people whose only understanding of the downtown east side is, poverty, which they may associate with danger, crime, safety, or and then they might think, well, what's in it for me? Why are you helping these people? What would you say to people that feel that way and to people that may not fully understand the significance of why we need to support marginalized people in the community? Why does it matter?
I think if you have to explain that caring for people is a good thing to someone, I'm not sure if that's a conversation that's going to go anywhere. I think it should be a fundamental human thing to have empathy for literally everyone that's struggling, or literally everyone on the planet. If empathy has become politicized, I mean, we're in a bad place. So, I would start there. I think the clip that you're talking about was. It was a scene with this is a safe injection site, and it wasn't. It was actually a video from a low barrier shelter in the Army and Navy building, and they warped it. They warped the truth because essentially because it's a grift for a lot of these YouTubers. They make money from it. They make money from subscriptions, but also it's a way for developers to get in there. And we're seeing that with another motion called the uplifting the downtown east side. If you can say that the city is broken, this area is broken, and ignore the humanity, ignore the community that's there, and say this, and capitalism is creating these conditions that you're talking about, inequality. Capitalism is creating the conditions, but then they're also saying that we're the only ones that can fix it. It makes no sense. No one's denying that there's a fire, but you can't be throwing gasoline on the fire and then saying, "Oh, I'm the only one that can then put it out because I threw more gasoline on it." It doesn't make any sense. Um, so if we're creating these conditions, then we can stop them. And I think there's a long kind of uh, tradition, especially in North America, to put an emphasis on personal responsibility, and ignore the very real policy decisions that made inequality happen and continue to happen. It's almost like a psyop that's like, well, these people, it's their lifestyle. They choose to use drugs, so it's out of my hands. And that's a real misunderstanding of the deep root causes of addiction, which is trauma usually, and poverty and lack of housing and not having your needs met, um, and a lot of times self-medicating because you're in pain. So if you don't understand that there's people in pain, and that we should have a society where people have dignity and don't live in pain, then um, I'm not sure what to do about that. I'm not sure how we got to that point where that it's a question. Um,
Right.
because the downtown east side has this remarkable kind of thing where it's it becomes a stand-in for poverty. So you just say, "Oh, the downtown east side is spread to Yaletown," or "The downtown east side is spread to the West End," which makes no sense. It's a geographical area, but what they're talking about is inequality is spreading. Inequality is getting worse around the world. Um, and so a lot of it's fear too, because we don't want inequality, but they punch down on the lowest thing because it's way easier than kind of punching up at this kind of um, mythical kind of framework that exists in the air, that is like the economy, that no one really understands, because you're not supposed to understand it, because they're supposed to understand it, and so you just punch down on someone else.
Right.
So one answer to that question about the downtown east side would be to ask people who live there what they think about the neighborhood. And that
Mm,
happened at the Carnegie Town Hall on January 30th. We asked people what's special about the downtown east side, and they wrote out their answers.
mhm.
And some of the answers are community that takes care of each other, all kinds of people, young and old, from all social backgrounds, bringing their cultural practices with them. Supportive, the spirit of the people, best community for caring, lots of love, community unity, positive, like minded goals, how generous people are, hidden gems, diamonds in the rough, socially aware community, lots of love again. People don't leave each other around behind. They help. They organize. Delph Van Du. The resources are stretched thin, but community never withholds from each other. The people, the community. This is our home. We live here. People are received as just who they are at that moment. Rich history of community building and action, strong sense of community and kind care. Anyway, that's about half of them. They're all like that. And then we asked what changes would improve the community, and everybody but two said housing. So, the I always say a ghetto is a place where people who are excluded from other areas try to build a community. And that's what's happening in the downtown east side.
Yeah.
People who are excluded from other areas because they can't afford rent
Mhm.
try to build a community. And it's definitely not perfect. And there's definitely a lot of things that could be improved, but it's not going to get improved by blaming the people who live there.
Yep.
Thank you so much to you both. I'm in tears.
Mhm.
um, I really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I am so grateful to get to speak with you both, and I wish you so much luck in this election. Um, yeah, we need voices for change, and it's just a real honor to get to talk to people that are doing that. I know it's not easy work, and uh, I'm looking forward to holding you accountable, Sean, and
Yep.
to keeping you accountable to the community, and yeah, and just for all the work that you're gonna do moving forward.
Yeah.
Thanks
That's
again.
it. I look forward to it. I look forward to getting a text from Jean, every morning, being like, "What are you doing?" So hopefully, big shoes to fill and a lot of responsibility, obviously, but yeah, it's something that I look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you so
If you
much.
get elected, Sean, if you get elected, Sean, I'll go over the agendas, the council agendas with you and
That'd
clue
be
you in
awesome.
about uh, different. Ann Roberts
That'd be
did
that'd
that
be
for me. So
You're hired.
Well, I look forward to speaking with you again as things go, and this was such a treat. Thank you so much, Sean and Jean. You're watching
thanks,
Best
Emily.
House. You're welcome, and yeah, I'll see you on the campaign trail. Elections take place Wednesday, March 26th, April 1st, and the big election day is April 5th, with polls open until 8 p.m. that day. Polls will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at City Hall, but be sure to arrive by 5 p.m. to any community voting locations. For more information on where to vote and who the other candidates are, go to vancouver.ca/vote or call 311. Hope to see you all there. Show up to vote. It's important. You're watching Best Press Media. I'm Emily Best.
News needs to be empowering, and that is why Best Press Media is hoping to change the landscape of how you consume your media and how you stay informed, with wellness at the forefront. If you'd like to support us, you can visit us on Instagram at Best Press Media. You can also support our Patreon page at Best Press Media. And stay tuned, we'll be updating our website at www.bestpress.ca. Thank you.